Let me open by saying that I'm very proud to bring this episode to you because it contains one of the most actionable and empowering concepts that I've ever discovered and that had a huge positive impact on my life. Do you have people in your life who aren't committed to their own growth and hinder yours? Do you have a partner or friends who are cynical, negative, disrespectful, shallow, or even abusive? As I've often said on this podcast, personal development is, if not downright impossible, severely hindered while being surrounded by a social circle whose members aren't both supportive and inspiring in their own journey. But how do you build that social circle? The short answer is, you earn it. Hello and welcome to the Valiant Growth Podcast. My name is Philip Frey and today I will be talking about the second core principle of relationships. Relationships are a trade. This is episode number 4 of the core principles of relationships. In previous episodes, we talked about how adult relationships are voluntary and what that means to our familial and societal connections. Whenever you are buying something, two main factors decide what level of quality you will get. The first one is how much value you can bring to the exchange, say how much money you have. The second one is your knowledge of the market. A mechanic will almost always find better deals than if I went to buy a car, because he has a vast experience in the field, whereas I'm still struggling to remember how many wheels these contraptions have. Since we buy relationships, as I will argue, the same principle applies. Today I will talk about bringing value, and the next podcast will be on knowing the market. It is my observation that all voluntary interactions between adults are some form of trade. Both parties give something and get something in exchange. My libertarian and free market listeners will love this, but if you just thought, man, that sounds really icky and ugly, I get where you're coming from. The mainstream depicts trade as something dirty, something linked to shady, hook-nosed and hunchback characters smoking cigars in back rooms, and puts friendship and love as something beyond the worldly, something fuzzy and warm, floating at 10 feet above ground, surrounded by a soft, angelic light with Gregorian choruses in the background. Once you look at it, however, there are only two types of relationships in this world. The ones that are trade-based and voluntary, and the ones that are coercion-based and involuntary, and this includes fraud. You'll find people that have the least to offer will almost always be the most ardent proponents of unconditional love and sacrifice, which fundamentally is their scam to get more than they deserve in this market. Think about this. Would you like to hear that your friends are with you not because time spent with you is quality time, because your virtues and accomplishments have earned their admiration, but in fact they are your friends in spite of your terrible company and vicious personality, because they believe friendship is magical and is a value above such dirty matters as trade and mutual benefit. Looking at my own past and present relationships and those of people around me where such relationships were a choice, so I'm not talking of familiar or societal relationships, I and others have always earned the people we were with, be it good or bad. People on a similar level of psychological development or healing will attract one another and will repel those who are on different levels. When I mean on the same level, it doesn't mean necessarily that the approach to survival with unhealed trauma is the same. You can often see couples and friends who appear dissimilar on the surface, but are what I call puzzle pieces from hell. Their dysfunction is different but compatible. Think of a couple where one party is shy, withdrawn, and depressive, while the other is grandiose, aggressively competitive, and seems very confident until he meets with any kind of criticism or setback where he breaks down or becomes very hostile and defensive. These are both signs of low self-esteem, with different strategies being employed. The second one being pseudo-self-esteem. You can read more about this in the 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden, as well as in the Drama of the Gifted Child by Alice Miller, where she talks about grandiosity and depression being the flip sides of the same coin. And I will link these in the description below. Now, once you realize this concept, you gain full agency in your relationships. You get empowered because the solution becomes obvious. To have better people in my life, I must first and foremost become the person that can earn that quality of relationships. This is very obvious, and obvious to the point where it's even discussed in books on personal development that aren't particularly deep. It's pretty widespread as far as knowledge goes, yet it is so rarely a guiding principle behind people's relationships. Once you fully make this idea your own, you will see how grotesque it is when people endlessly, years on end, complain about their partners and friends and co-workers. Not only are these people that they have chosen and chose to have every day in their life, but it is also a reflection of their own level of development, and yet were you to believe them, they are somehow the martyrs of the bunch, the one good person who puts up with all this inferior companionship. And it may indeed be that they are better in some aspects, but it is their failure to be courageous, take initiative, and break away the thing that brings them down. It brings down the level of what they can get. And they must first break away, because better potential friends and partners are aware of this principle, whether consciously or unconsciously, and will see through the complaints and will judge that person by his or her social circle. There are 2 ways in which you earn better relationships. The first thing that must match is a set of what I call core virtues and values. An incompatibility on this level makes a relationship impossible. An honest person cannot be friends with a dishonest person. A person of purpose will be repulsed by someone who drifts through life. A person of self-knowledge will be wary of the dangers of being in a relationship with someone who is ignorant of their inner world. I, at some point in the past, developed a list of core virtues with definitions that I update pretty regularly and that I use both as a guide for myself and what to look out for in a social circle. Another thing that's important is the idea of philosophical compatibility. And without going too deep into the terminology of the subject, which other people have done better than me, just search the branches of philosophy, it's important to have people who have similar outlooks on the essence of reality, whether it can be discovered or not, and also whether there are ethics that flow from this or not. My own conclusions after having studied the field is that reality exists, and only one reality, only one truth exists. The way to discover this reality, first of all, it is possible for human beings to eventually unfold every secret. And the tool for this is the combination of empirical observation and logical deduction, and that there is a universal set of morality and ethical rules that can be derived from reality. And I'm not going to go into details here. I will link to Stefan Molyneux's old series on the branches of philosophy, which I found pretty useful. The message here is that, for instance, if you share my beliefs that there is a reality out there, for instance, you will have a very hard time getting along with someone who believes that it's all an illusion. If you've come to the conclusion that reason and evidence is the way for discovering truth, you will have a very hard time getting along with someone using mysticism or claiming that truth is unknowable. And if you adhere to a set of ethical rules and to universal morality, you will have a very hard time being with someone who is amoral or who has opposing views. And all of this can be argued out, and the best position can win in a relationship, in the sense that both parties can get to the same conclusion, hopefully the stronger one. But you will often find arguments that go on endlessly, and parties just repeating the same idea over and over again, and there's no communication happening. That is often because of a philosophical incompatibility. For instance, if two parties don't agree on how truth can be found, what the tools are that are appropriate to this task, there is no way for resolving a religious argument, for instance. So if one party is scientific method and the other party is revelation and mysticism or authority, they will never come to a conclusion that they can both agree to. And I think in relationships, it's important to establish this early on. And when it comes to earning relationships, it's important for you to establish where you stand on these issues. And the more clear you are, and the more solid your argument is, the more it is based in reality, the better relationships you will be able to get. The principle of diminishing returns applies to this as well, of course. Doing a 10-year mountain retreat to figure this out perfectly might not be the best approach, but some investment will definitely yield great results. Now, the other aspect is relationship and support skills. The things that make a connection more enjoyable and more sustainable. For example, by becoming a person of greater gentleness, better listening skills, more focus on empathy, you can earn people who are the same and can form solid emotional support networks. By becoming someone who is great at personal finances, you can earn people who are also great at it, and you can form solid financial support networks. Would you rather offer a pledge of emotional support to someone who has enough skills to handle most things on their own, will only come to you in rare cases of great need, and who you know will give great support when you need it, or to someone who never solves their problems and is a terrible listener? Would you rather give a loan to someone who has a proven track record of frugality and wisdom around money and is highly responsible, or to someone who is well-intentioned but doesn't have a grasp on his finances? Both core virtues and skills are something that you develop by assessing your current level with honesty and gentleness, and then working day by day to improve. My aim is for Valiant Growth to be a resource in this, and to connect you to other resources from people who are further ahead than me, as well as a supportive community. The most expensive, but also the most impactful way to really gain these skills is through coaches. Coaches, if you think within this framework, are people whose value you can't earn within the context of a friendship, because you can't match their levels. This is where money comes in as a compensation for their time, and if they are good, you'll quickly start picking up their skills. And if you're committed, of course. I know that the reason I'm paying my therapist is because I couldn't earn her friendship. She has amazing support skills that make her an amazing friend, and at my current level, I just can't match and earn that. And this was a little bit painful when I first realized it, but it also made me hopeful knowing that one day I can have people just like her as friends in my life as I build these skills with every passing day. And the same thing applies to any other coaching relationship, really. You pay a golf coach because it wouldn't be fun intrinsically for him to play with you. You pay a financial advisor a fee because you can't sit down with him in a coffee shop and have a mutual conversation about all sorts of cool financial perspectives. But learn enough and you will be able to earn that kind of people in your life. To sum up, the most empowering concept in relationships is that relationships are a trade. They are earned. To get amazing people in your life, you must become amazing yourself. There are some quick wins, but the core philosophy is that you must grow in your virtues and skills gradually every day of your life to get to be around the best people that this world has to offer. Thank you for listening to Valiant Growth, and I dare you to flourish today. The two main platforms where people consume this podcast is YouTube and iTunes. So if you are on YouTube, please subscribe. And if you're listening on iTunes, please leave me a rating and a review. I would really appreciate that. Also, if you found today's episode valuable, please share it with your friends and like the Facebook page and invite your friends to like it. Those friends who you know are interested in this sort of thing. I'm sure they will appreciate it. Thank you.